was Mr. Robbie Romero, Who's Gonna Save You, and off of Eagle Thunder Records. And we got Chief Phil Lane on the line, and how are you tonight, Uncle?
Very good, Tushka.
Yeah.
Very good. Just got back from Panama late last night, and really happy to be back in beautiful Canada, Northwest area.
Well, we're excited. I knew that you were traveling, and I never know where you're at these days. I catch up on your Facebook post, and I know where you're doing. But we talked a little bit about what was happening in Panama, and I also know that you've been in direct contact with the folks in Dakota territory and what's going on there, and with the Keystone Pipeline. And like I was telling you on the phone, I just feel like a lot of things are increasing more.
Absolutely.
With fracking and all kinds of things. I'd like to talk a little bit about that.
And so are our prayers and our unity and our strength. They're increasing even more at the same time that the other forces of greed and materialism and destruction are increasing. But we're increasing even more quickly in our prayers and our strength and our unity and our vision and the fulfillment of the prophecy. So I feel very, very, very hopeful and very strong and good about what's emerging from our young generations. I think that's where the real strength is. And it was a great experience for me yesterday to have, for the first time, the experience of being at 36,000 feet, traveling about 500 miles an hour, somewhere between Houston and Vancouver, and then realizing I was able to use the internet from there.
Really?
Wow. My experience that I was sharing about what's going on in Panama with a lot of different relatives as I zoomed along. And I just couldn't quite get it. I mean, I could get it, what was happening, but time has passed so quickly, and all of a sudden you can sit on this was a Airbus, and sit on one of these big Airbuses, 36,000 miles, 36,000 feet in the air, traveling at 500 miles an hour, and just be on a computer as if you're sitting at home. And it just amazed me. So there's a lot of technologies that are emerging, green technologies, alternatives to all this that's going on. It's just getting the people and all the relatives to awaken to how dire the situation is. But one great hopeful thing, another hopeful thing is another great, but one of the many, many great, wonderful, hopeful, historic things that are happening is the prophecies say that in the future, which is now, that Panama will have a great destiny and a great role to play in the reunion of the Condor and Eagle. And from the film Shift of the Ages, Tata Alejandro says it'll start in the center. And of course, you'll see in the film there, it shows the literal cutting of the north and the south right there at the Panama Canal. And so that's just where I was for the last 10 days, and supporting in a respectful manner the efforts there of the indigenous people from across Panama. And for the first time in indigenous history that I know of anywhere in the world, the indigenous peoples of Panama, all 11 congresses of different nations who speak different languages. For instance, like in Cunayala, the Cunas have really retained their language. In fact, many don't speak Spanish. They only speak Cuna. Like some of them speak Cuna and some English and not any Spanish. But the leadership there was able to come together under the tremendous support of Cunamoip. Cunamoip is the indigenous women of Panama. They played such an incredibly powerful role in this process. And what happened was they came together, and in the last 5 years, the government of Panama, not one time, they've asked to speak and have consultation with the president. And he's completely ignored them. They've been ignored. Not only ignored, But when they finally just couldn't take some of the things that were going on, trying to violate, all the agreements they'd made, and trying to put in copper mines and all these various other things, they blockaded twice the country. And of course, 60% of the Panamanian population has indigenous background, and they got strong public support, and were able to close down the country for 2 weeks. And finally, they backed off this one big copper mine, although they're still proceeding on this one big dam that's going to be starting to flood their villages very soon. And so what they did was they came together, and they, you might say, made a treaty. I would call it a treaty, or in Spanish, it would be like a agreement, much deeper than an agreement. One that essentially was a united stand, a united position on where the indigenous peoples of Panama stand collectively. And there's about 4 nations that don't have, for instance, any defined territory. And the others that do put number one as the number one issue they wanted resolved by whoever was president, that all the peoples of Panama were to have their own lands, in which they have about 22% of the land of Panama. And so from the smallest to the largest nations came together. And they put a team together of the various nations, and they drew up this really remarkable document. I can't wait till it gets published in English. And they put the signatures of all the presidential candidates, because on May 4th, there'll be a new election. And they put all the names of all the different caciques or chiefs of all the different lands, their territories or reserves or reservations. And then I was very honored to be the honored international indigenous witness. And then they had the head of the indigenous women's of Panama be the national honored indigenous witness to this. And they held it at this very wonderful location, the Panama Hotel Panama. And they had a press conference that morning, very, very, very well attended. And people were just really coming out in support. And then when the event happened at 2 o'clock this past Monday, it was just packed with indigenous people from all over Panama. They came in. Someone had to travel 2 days and 2 nights by buses to get there, or in the backs of trucks. But they came, and there's a picture you've probably seen on Facebook. It shows 5 of the presidential candidates, and then all on one side, and all the elected leadership and traditional leadership. Some of the tribes still have their hereditary leadership process. And they spent almost 3 hours in this very intense debate. And each issue, they would give first the candidates a chance to express how, from looking at the paper, looking at their position, how they felt about this. And they all expressed their feelings very strongly. Some were stronger than others. And then each chief asked a question that they had 1 minute to answer. They didn't know what the questions were. And finally, the final question was, will you, with complete honor and integrity, uphold and vow to work together with us to complete these, if you're elected president, over the next 5 years? And then after, of course, they all said yes, and after, to solemnize it, they had the document signed by all the chiefs and signed by 5 of the 7 presidential candidates signed it. And then the international and national indigenous witness, we signed it. And then it was legally notarized. And they have that opportunity really now to decide who's going to be the next president of Panama. So it's going to appear, the document's going to appear with all the signatures, including the ones that didn't sign. And it so happens that the government that has done, and done a fair, there's been, when these relatives were there with rocks, they just shot them. There's been, relatives killed there, many wounded in this last 3 or 4 years of the struggle they've had. But obviously, they're leaving the spaces open for the candidate that's now being trying to replace the current president, his kind of protege. And then it's so interesting how controlling this is. The current president's wife is now running for vice president with the president's choice for president. But he didn't even give the courtesy to give a call back. He didn't even give the courtesy to say, thank you, I can't come. And one of the candidates, independent candidates, either. But that was fine, because when it comes out in the newspaper, it'll be real clear to the Panamanian people and the indigenous people who actually had the respect and honor to come and at least participate, and who just completely, disrespected the whole process. And there's a number of reporters now that are really on this and are going to begin asking some very strong questions when this comes out this Friday. And of course, then with the election close by, this could be a deciding factor depending on what the indigenous people decide to do. It's in their hands. And of course, from the outside, you want to totally honor and respect that. But it was something to see what can be done through the power of unity. And while this was happening, there's a good brother of mine down in Brazil who's been working at this for many, many, many years, and is kind of the primary leader of the indigenous people there in Brazil. And sure enough, Marcos Torrio is his name, Marcos Torreno. Sure enough, the attorney from the Cunas, he said, look what I've got. There was Marcos had sent an email saying, now we're going to do this in Brazil. We're going to do this in Brazil. So it's happening. It's really happening. And so in in February, starting on the 17th of February, we're holding the Indigenous Council of the Americas in City of Knowledge in Panama City. And literally, we're going to travel those former routes of trade routes and personally invite. There'll be different runners coming and inviting. And one big gathering will be in Guatemala with Tata Alejandro, with all the Mayan elders. Grand Council of Mayans will come there. We'll come up from Panama, travel up to Guatemala to make proper offerings to the different groups across the Americas. So down into Colombia, down through Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, down into Mapuche territory in Colombia, clear down the tip of Argentina. Wherever there's indigenous people, there'll be personal invitations delivered to them from one group, then to another group, then to another group. We'll be passing them from group to group. And hopefully we're going to see if the Peace and Dignity Run can somehow get involved in this too. We're just getting the planning started. But what's really great is, when we were planning it, we found that the evening of February 21st is like New Year's Eve for the new Mayan year, which begins February 22nd. And that year is called Destiny, and it's meaning that stepping into your destiny. It's time for us to step into our destiny and change what's going on in this world. And we're in the process of doing that. And then we've linked up and made a partnership with our Kuna relatives in Cunayala. And they're going to be celebrating the 90th anniversary of the Kuna Revolution of Nelly Cantuli and those that joined him. This revolution of indigenous people that actually freed the San Blas Islands from Panamanian rule. In fact, they had declared a republic for a time, And but the U.S. government came in and negotiated an agreement for their autonomy, and so they became an autonomous region of Panama, of which they have control. In fact, you can't really go in there without. They used to have you had to have a visa to go into the island. And so from there, the relatives who join us, some will go out in 4 locations across the San Blas Islands. They'll be celebrating their 90-year revolution, talking about how that happened and how they were able to maintain their cultures. And then, as well, others will be able to go out and visit into the Imbera territories, into all the different other tribal areas in Panama, which are incredibly diverse and exciting. So that's going to be our first really demonstration of really creating, you might say, our own council, which was also agreed that the move is on now to move the Permanent Forum for Indigenous Peoples Issues at the UN Permanent Forum from New York to Panama. So that because the U.S. is so strict on visas and the cost is like $300 a day for some of these hotels, the food, and there's no place to pray, no place to express yourself culturally. So that's a little bit about what happened in Panama.
So
it was very, very exciting.
So, well, if the elections, how would that affect the rest of us if indeed this would be the second indigenous person to be a president, right?
Well, no, there's not these. All 5 candidates came. None of them are indigenous people. There's no indigenous people running for president.
Okay.
But one of them, for instance, has a very strong environmental background, and his whole work has been environmental.
Okay.
And he actually knows 2 indigenous Panamanian languages. In fact, he greeted every single nation in their own language.
Wow, that's amazing.
And I think that, and he's running. I mean, the current government's candidate is just maybe 1-2% in the polls ahead, and sometimes he drops back. But they have now at least a agreement among themselves, and they have their thing on the table. It's going to go up before the Panamanian public next week, next Friday, and it's we're moving forward, and the City of Knowledge, where our institute is, our foundation is, they're now really going to be focused. They asked Four Worlds can work with them on a whole series of events on green technologies. And of course, that's been a thing that we've really been looking at in terms of how do we really deal with alternatives to this current situation. And there's some quite remarkable technologies. I'm on my way to Taiwan here in May. We have had a really wonderful relative from over in that part of the world has come behind us with a lot of support, and now has dedicated a portion of all proceeds from this technology that will go into the foundation in Panama to support our work. But what this technology does, and it's all patented in both China and Taiwan, is that it is like a mini refinery. But what it refines is plastic waste and old oil that's come, and when you do your oil change in your car, and there's no emissions. I mean, it's within the green range. It's not like going and burning plastic. And so a 10-ton plant runs 24 hours a day, 10 tons of old plastic that you put in there, or old dirty oil or whatever. And it produces 7 tons of high-grade diesel, and 30% of it, and almost 30% what's left, 7 tons, 10-ton unit, and then 3 tons almost of pure carbon. And carbon, of course, is used in a lot of different industry for different things. So now this is not the end solution, but it begins taking the waste that we have, and we have, the mines of the future are going to be our garbage dumps. I mean, there's so much in garbage dumps. And, of course, we have a group coming with us from Mexico City and to Taiwan with me from about 4 cities there in Mexico. I tell you how many to look at. They're very serious. Mexico has really gone taken a long step forward in dealing with garbage, because people have taken that garbage and turned it into something that now worth something. They're taking the waste and turning it into something useful. So we begin cutting down on using continuing to frack and continuing to create just more and more of this pollution. So there's that. There's a biodigester that is now, as I've had the chance to see, and my dear sister is working with that. That has the capacity to take all bio waste of every form. And so you have 2 types of things we're working on. One is what can you do in your home to become off the grid, to get the energy you need to heat or to cool your home. Things that you can do to individually, to benefit yourself. And then there's another level, and that is what can governments and what can industry do in terms of cutting back and stopping the use of and continued destruction of Mother Earth. And so that's a main focus now of what Four Worlds is looking at. Is that, and so our focus at our big Indigenous Council of the Americas will be looking at all these different types of technologies we can use. I mean, like for instance, we're looking at like wind technology. Well, some of these great big wind turbines, they're so big and tall, they really can interfere with natural wildlife and birds and so forth. But now, Tsleil-Waututh is in partnership up here in Vancouver. Tsleil-Waututh Nation, Chief Leonard George's community is in partnership on windmills. There's wind turbines that are small. So these are ones that can just generate what's needed for a small community. And so there's also now new technologies that don't have to dam rivers anymore. They have a way, they use direct some of the water in through a long pipe, and of course there's screens on it and so forth to protect from fish coming in there, and then they're able to generate energy as that water comes back into the river. And there's tide energy, and there's big tides down in particularly in Panama. They have, particularly on the Atlantic side, they have really strong tides. So there's tide energy. And of course, there's the solar is advancing. It's coming forward. And then, of course, using garbage of various forms to create energy and to create alternative ways of doing things for food security.
So, how, I know that there's these technologies are there, but how do we, the word I'm trying to get is to get folks to bring them into our communities? How do we demand them to be here in our communities?
First, there's so many ideas. I think it's really important because this has been an area I've been, really went up a lot of blind alleys over the years, because everybody wants to find something that can help our Mother Earth. I shouldn't say everybody, but certainly Indigenous people and many other human beings realize we're destroying the very, very future that our future generations need to have to live, to survive. We're destroying it before our eyes. And so you've got to really be careful to differentiate between that which is an idea or a theory or kind of a prototype that hasn't been tested. Because there's many out there. People say, "Well, I can do this." So that what we're looking at are what are those technologies that have been at least 4 or 5 years have clearly demonstrated they can do what they say they do, and then you have to physically go look at them. So we know that once we get a plant, and that's where we're focusing on Mexico because they're so sharp there on this. I mean, they have taken out the mafia out of a lot of mafia. I shouldn't say mafia, but many organized crime has controlled garbage for a long time. And it just, I won't get into all the details of that. They clean that out of at least that part of Mexico, and so they're really advanced, way more advanced than the United States. You have other countries in Europe that are way more advanced. On one hand, there's a lot of destructive things going on in China. At the same time, the Chinese people themselves are just, and the people living in Beijing, for instance, the pollution gets so bad, they're really taking a lead now in green technology. So that's almost kind of schizophrenic in some ways. Some places, people are really moving towards green energy, while at the same time they're maybe not. They're doing things that we know, damming up great big rivers and things. We know that from what happened in the Columbia River, this is not the way to go.
Right.
But
in most places, unfortunately or unfortunately, whatever way you look at it, I feel that they're way ahead of the United States. And I remember what you said a while back about your last trip to Panama. I think it was. You said that when the gringo starts selling their oil, you know that we're close. And I think that because of that, they haven't sold it, all of it, and so until then, I think this is my brain working. Until they feel that they're at that point where they could switch over.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think that our government's there yet, and but it's all gonna also, we're gonna see where we stand with the pipeline, getting into the pipeline with Obama.
Well, I mean, it's quite amazing. That's we're going to move over in that direction. It looks that the Enbridge line to the north here in British Columbia, it looks like it's dead. It looks like they're not going to go. It looks like it's finished because there's such strong opposition by the people there, by the municipalities, and by the indigenous people, just saying, "No way you're going to come through here. No way. No way. You shall not pass." So look. I can really say that looks like that battle's been won. We'll wait and see, but I think it's been won. Because if they do try, it would just be, really, a battle, a real battle. In the courts and everything else, there's no treaties here been made, so literally they stole this land from in British Columbia, other than the 7% they've done some settlement on. So that's, to me, I believe, is finished. And this incredible, and this is not an easy deal. I have to say that when we signed this international treaty to protect the sacred from tar sands projects back in South Dakota on January 25th, 2013, that's really when they started. In a way, the Cowboy Indian Alliance was already kind of beginning, but really got, in a way, formalized at the treaty signing there on January 25th, 2013. And then it just began to grow. And I have to say, Faith Spotted Eagle has been such an incredible power force, and the women have been such a credible force and power. Horrible-looking horse, and his wife Paula have done a great job. Deborah from Moccasins on the Ground, Deborah White Plume, has done tremendous work. The grandmas, and then it spread over to Rosebud, and then of course the Galalas were there at the first signing, and made a lot of good support from elders that came to the first event we had. And slowly but surely, this has been growing until now you have, this event happening in Washington, D.C., where you have, busloads coming from Cheyenne River, from Rosebud, from people coming Standing Rock, from Ihanktonwan territory where I'm ruled on my father's side, the Yankton Sioux tribe. They're coming. Honor the Earth is coming. They're bringing riders from the 38, the ride for the 38 relatives who were hung mass, made as the greatest mass hanging in the history of the United States. Those riders are coming. The Ordinary riders are coming, the representatives of them. Now, the wonderful thing is, at the same time, because what we know for sure, it's prayer. Sure, there's action. You've got to put action. But no prayers without action, you don't have anything. That's words without deeds. But this is prayerful action, unified, prayerful, unprecedented action. Well, the wonderful thing was, and I think this is where I have to really again see the incredible spiritual insight that Chief Orville Looking Horse has as the keeper of our sacred white buffalo calf pipe. He was scheduled to go to Washington, D.C., but rather than do that, because this is the key. This is going to be different. This is not a thing to come and we're going to get arrested. So not that there's anything wrong with that. This is all going to be done in prayer, in ceremony. And so while that's going on, they're going to open on the very day that the big spiritual gathering that will be going on in Washington, D.C., they're going to open the white buffalo calf pipe for the people to pray together, the Dakotas, and connect spiritually with those in Washington, D.C. So we're really seeing something unprecedented. And the interesting thing was, we had this video ready to go out called Obama's 50 Wounded Knees. And we've been praying when to release. We're actually going to release it 2 weeks ago. And then we thought, well, this gathering's coming up. And this is where I think it's important to know that really anything that happens in this physical world is a result of the intention from a spiritual place. That's true authentic power. Authentic power is not being able to manipulate the physical world. Authentic power comes from within, where you don't give in to your frightened self, and you move from that strength within in prayer and vision and intention. And that intention is so powerful when it gets united. And so we just held back from the video. And the interesting thing was, we released the video. At the same time, it was released as a message. Obama surprised everybody and has postponed the decision on Keystone XL until after the November elections. Now, that was a shocker. Well, I'll tell you what, that gives me a little bit of hope on that, because both Democrats and some Democrats and, of course, Republicans were incensed. They were enraged. I mean, they thought it was a done deal. But it's been postponed now, officially, because that's his decision. It's been postponed now to after the next November election. That's a huge timing. I mean, they already have their pipes ready. They have all these things in motion. And now, all of a sudden, I mean, how many months is that now? It's been moved. It's already been moved once. Now it's been moved. Now it's been moved clear until after the elections. Well, after the elections, really, after those mid-year elections, whatever a president kind of chooses to do after that, pretty well in their hands, because that's the last part of their reign, so to speak, the last part of their thing. And so possibly, who knows?
Yeah.
It might be dead.
But it's all the things that we've been talking about, it's all a part of it.
All part of it.
Yeah.
And then, then comes the only way they can get this out, except through tankers and, through, by vehicles, by trucks or rail or whatever, and that's the Kinder Morgan, which I've always seen as the real get down on the ground battle, and that's exactly what's unfolding. But as we speak, an international treaty to protect the sacredness of the Salish Sea has been drafted, looked over by elders, and whenever that time they choose to do that, because that's the Salish nations, both the U.S. and Canada, will be announcing coming together to sign that, and that will effectively bring a force, again, another international force. And they also signed the international treaty perspective from tar sands projects up here at Tsleil-Waututh, where we had all the Union of BC Indian chiefs.
Jewel James was there from Lummi, and
Jewel James is there.
Reuben.
Now Jewel's doing this incredible project. Jewel is taking and carving up a totem pole, a special one, and he's going to transport that directly up to Winona Leduc's up her area, up her Anishinaabe area. They're going to bring it from there, and this journey is going to go from there, and they're going to stop at Ihanktonwan, my own home territory, where Face Spotted Eagle is, and all my relatives. Stop and have a ceremony there. They're going to come up through Montana, on up into Seattle. Big ceremony there. I don't know if they're going to stop at Crow. They did before, and different stops along the way. Then they'll come there. Then they're going to go up and take a ferry from up into Seattle, from up into Victoria, of course, where the legislature, and they're going to have a big event there. And then that that pole will come across, then it'll go probably north into Vancouver Island, come down across into Tsleil-Waututh, big ceremonies there, and then it's being given to this nation that's suffering so much from the tar sands, and it's going to go there. So the spiritual action is happening. And there's going to be people who'll take shots at it. I mean, you can't, Tushka, as I told you when we first started our working on that Walking the Red Road, when the cry of truth is raised, so is the cry of denial. It comes with the dinner. No matter what you do, how sincere you are, how positive you want to be, there's always going to be people who take shots at you. You've got to remember that. In fact, you really learn pretty quick. I can tell you after 46 years now, I'm going to be 70 here just a couple of months, that you always end up with lots of bullets in the chest and lots of arrows in the back. That comes with the dinner. Now, what I've learned is, instead of being upset about it, and I just didn't like that sometimes, and I would, I could come back and shoot back at them. It doesn't work. You just got to be able to, when that bullet comes, just grab it with your hand and say, thank you for beauty. Put it in your pocket.
Yeah.
When the arrow comes to your back, just pull it out and say, well, thank you, that's a beauty. Put it in your quiver. And just go on. You got to go on with it.
Yeah. So
we're only here for a short time.
Yeah, we got a couple more minutes, Uncle, and so I just wanted to, first express thanks for sharing with us. I know when people take flights, and that's an international flight you took, and being able to come and be on the air, I appreciate it, and share with our relatives, and the importance of unity, feeling it across the board too, with all the other things that are increasing. I know that all those things that you were talking about are all increasing too, and I'm just in gratitude that there's people on the ground that are doing what they're doing.
Well, there's way more many than myself. Every single person is doing the work, exactly the work they need to be able to do. As long as we surrender to the Creator and don't allow our egos to try to run the show, let the Creator do that, and realize sometimes the Creator's agenda is not our agenda. We have to ask, what is that Creator's agenda? How can I serve it?
Right.
And it's not easy. It is tough sometimes. When we talk about making alliances, or we talk about having unity, it has to be a unity in diversity. It has to be a unity of respect and love and compassion and kindness, and respect, forgiveness, because we all make mistakes sometimes. So we got to get up, like that white buffalo cap type song things.
All right, so we just we got a few seconds left. I just appreciate you calling this evening, and I definitely will keep in touch.
Will do.
All right. Have a good evening.
Happy Easter.
Yes.
To those that celebrate Easter.
Yeah, blessings to you, and we'll talk soon.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So this is Peter Boom, and you are listening to Chaos Radio 80.